Hello. Today we're going to talk about the effectiveness of using a unit plan. And in this process, I reviewed several videos of high school science teachers. Probably the most influential for me was the video of Kelly Woodson, who's a 9th grade science teacher who made great use of her unit plan, and this assisted in her managing her classroom. I also viewed a before and after video for Mrs. Vreeland where she was teaching high school English. You could see her students were rather bored before she got some mentor coaching, and then afterwards when she developed a good unit plan, her classroom management improved and her students seemed more engaged. And then finally I watched a video of Sean Wilson, who was teaching science students about the skeletal system. It did not appear that he was very prepared, but we'll discuss that in a moment. So with Kelly Woodson, you can see that she uses her unit plan. During the summer, she creates this unit plan, and then for each lesson, she's well prepared in advance of the students with her do now written at the front of the classroom. Also her objectives, as she called aims, are written at the front of the classroom, and then she also writes on her whiteboard the specific instructions of what activities the students will do during their laboratory experiments. During the video, it was apparent that her students stayed on task and seemed to be well engaged. Now, in the case of the other science teacher who was teaching about the skeletal system, he was writing on the board during class, causing him to turn his back to the class, so he wasn't quite as well prepared. While he seemed to know his individual unit, it was not apparent that he had a full unit plan going. And so one had the impression that he was just going to talk about the spine during this class without reference to prior classes or future classes coming up. So he seemed to be talking at his students. He would ask a couple of questions, but the students all seemed pretty tired and sleepy, to say the least. Oops, sorry, we went back one. But at any rate, formative assessments are important during use of a unit plan for a couple of reasons. One, it allows the teacher to know if the students are staying on task and if they're learning, but it also gives the teacher a chance to revise her lesson on the fly if she needs to, or do some revisions on future lessons. Kelly Woodson monitors her students during class by walking around and observing students performing their experiments, asking them questions about what they're doing, and that gives her an idea of how they're doing during the actual lab experiment. But then also at the end of each class, she collects lab data reports, and that allows her to know if they had done homework the night before to be well prepared for that lesson. In my experience, teaching to me seems a lot like scuba diving because when you're scuba diving, as the PADI mantra says, you need to plan your dive and dive your plan. And the same thing goes for teaching. A well-planned unit will allow for better organization, and you won't get yourself in trouble, as we can see in this video coming up here, that I'll bring over to you, and we'll play it. Survival in the classroom depends on a unit, just like survival when scuba diving depends on planning your dive and diving your plan. This is real evident here where you see some scuba divers who are diving their plan, and when their instructor asks if they're okay, most of them are all thumbs up because they planned their act. A lot of the divers in this video had planned their dive, and so they were comfortable in doing thumbs ups to their diving instructor. And then there was one diver who had not planned her dive, And you're going to see in a
and
moment
everything
what
goes wrong in a
happens.
real big hurry and
She
gets really
starts to
scary
get panicky.
really fast.
You can see her
And that
blowing
can happen in
bubbles.
the
She rips
classroom
out her
where you lose
regulator and
classroom
pulls off her
management
mask. She's in a
and
total
everything
panic.
just starts
And if a
to
teacher
tank.
did this in front of a classroom, it would be total chaos, just like
This
these
could be
bubbles
fatal
appear.
for this diver, and
So
it
this could be
horrific
fatal
for
for
your
this
classroom
diver
management,
because if
and
she,
also for the ability for your
rises to the
students to
surface too
learn,
quickly, she can throw an
and for
embolism.
your success
And in
as
the
a career
classroom,
teacher.
if you don't have your unit planned well, you won't survive as a teacher either. Survival in the classroom. So my experiences in planning a unit were such that it was real important to me that you use backwards mapping, especially for the Arizona Science Standards. And then that way I could develop, use the objectives from that standard to develop my unit and also my lessons in a coherent fashion. It seems that if I plan my assessments early in the process of planning my unit, that things would be easier. In this case for Teach Now, we did not do that, but I certainly see the importance of doing that. And then I'm referencing the Dodgeball movie here because it was a rather funny one where they keep talking about dodging, diving, and ducking to avoid getting hit by the ball and having a painful experience. With unit planning, I think it's important to rehearse your lessons and your plans, reflect on their effectiveness, and then revise them as needed so that you can dodge a poor performance in your teaching and poor performance on the part of the students. So in my mind, effective teacher planning is super important. It's going to result in well-organized lessons. If your lesson happens to get done early, if you were already prepared with the whole unit, you can simply move on to the next lesson during that class period to get ahead of the game, because there will always be cases where it's easy to get behind the game if you have an unexpected fire drill or other events that happen to disrupt your lessons. You're also going to have better student engagement because you can keep them moving and on task because you're organized. And then in turn, this results in better classroom management. So overall, having a well-planned unit would result in more student learning. And then these are the references for the dodgeball picture, but also I have the other references for the videos.